Just want to say it's been great talking with all of you, learning about all your successes. I feel very humbled to be speaking in front of you today. So I can confidently say all of us here are on a path to success. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my journey as a filmmaker and some of the techniques I've learned that have helped me navigate my journey. But before I get into that, I wanted to share a little background on myself. Here we go. Grew up in Milwaukee. I have 2 older brothers. Here's our whole family in front of the Great Wall. We recently came back from a really cool trip to China. And then I studied computer science at UW-Madison, recently graduated in December. But beyond computer science, my number one passion has been filmmaking. And that started in 2011. And then in high school, I did some freelance work, worked for some different agencies. And then in college, worked for the university and some other companies. And freshman year, I met my now friend and business partner, Eric. And together we started our current company, Bascom Brothers. So we've been running that legitimately for about a year now. And we have an office space here in 100 State. So it's been a really fun ride. And before I get into the meat of the talk, I wanted to play for you a short kind of demo of our work. So this is 1 minute long. Make it fast.
That's what I'm talking about. Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
So, like I was saying, we're all on this journey, this path to success, and you're rising upward on this rather phallic-looking road. Let's try and get a next. Okay, there we go. The road to success. We're all on it, driving off into the sunset. Sorry.
Keep talking.
So we're entrepreneurs here. We're probably listening to some podcasts, Planet Money, Freakonomics. You're making business calls, all business related, of course. You're staying on the hustle, staying educated, even while you're mobile. But we all know this path isn't always smooth sailing. I have it here. Thank you. Sometimes things might come in your way, like Exhibit A, the big ass boulder, otherwise known as the roadblock. So you push your app, and everyone signs up, and the servers go down, or illness takes you away from your project and you get mono for a month and it distracts you from school or your project. So this definitely stops you in your track along that journey. Or this could also happen to you. So you're going along this nice road and all of a sudden it breaks off into 10 different paths. And you're like, what the heck? I have to choose a path to go on. Which one will actually lead to my goal? This is the infamous fork. So we have the boulder, or the roadblock, and the fork, these 2 scenarios on our path to success. They both have very similar feelings. We come to them, they stop us in our tracks, they strike terror into our very being, but they actually have very different approaches. We're not going to approach a boulder, we're not going to get through a boulder the same way that we can decide on a path to take at the fork. So I kind of understood the importance of identifying these 2 different experiences when I was reflecting on my journey as a filmmaker. And so I want to share with you a little bit of that journey now. So here's the start of my filmmaking career, 2011. My parents win this Flip HD camera in an auction. Some of you might be familiar with this. It's like a one-stop shop of video recording. There's just a few buttons, and with this camera and a very simple piece of software, the progression from initial idea of a video to final video was a pretty straight path. That left picture there is like a one-way street, few decisions to be made. And now we fast forward to now, where we are. We have Bascom brothers, new techniques, new equipment. We got audio equipment, lighting, new cameras, new lenses, so many more tools in our tool bag. But at the same time, a lot more decisions to be made. And the process from going from initial idea to final video has now turned into this crazy path of so many forks, so many decisions to be made in that process. So I began to realize over the years that as my resources went up, my ability to make decisions, it became harder to make decisions because there were many more decisions to be made, and I was kind of paralyzed by all those forks in the process. So you can actually see this. I charted the number of uploads I made on my personal YouTube channel over the past years. 2011, the year of the flip camera, love in filmmaking, discovered it, 28 video uploads then. And you can see over the years, as my tools increase, unfortunately, my creativity is kind of stifled by that paralyzing necessity to make those creative choices with all this equipment. So for a long time, I thought I was experiencing a creative roadblock. This is a very real thing creatives go through. You hear about writers experiencing like writer's block. But this really wasn't the case for me. I soon realized it was a creative fork. And once I identified this, like I said, there's different techniques to combat this. And so I had a more focused approach on how to increase my productivity once again. And so that's when I learned about creative constraints. These are creative constraints can help with these forks, whether they're forks in our projects, decisions that we have to make on a per project basis, or just in general in life. So creative constraints are natural or self-imposed limitations that help guide oneself forward. So these are ways that we can eliminate certain paths when we come to these forks and reveal the one that makes the most sense. And so actually throughout all the presentations today, we had speakers talk about constraints the whole day. So Spencer started off, he said time constraints force great ideas. Time constraints knock off some of those paths. Gopika said, really keep that mission statement in focus for our projects. That constrains us for future decisions. And then Matthew was talking about, he had that whole chart with his capital and his time, and he plotted all those, and then he probably constrained himself. He's like, how much time do I have? How much capital I have? That helped focus his decision process. So we all face creative constraints. Engineers, you're going to face the laws of nature. You're not going to design like a rocket without considering gravity. Entrepreneurs, like we said, capital constraints. Enthusiastic artists, I had to keep the E alliteration going. The chromatic scale, so you can think all Western music is composed with just 12 notes, or the color spectrum. So let's go. Can you hit one further? Thank you. So we all face these different forks, these different decision points, whether on a project basis or more generally in life. So here are 5 things that I've kind of learned and I'm still trying to implement for myself, and maybe they'll help you as well. So first one is developing constraints, like we just talked about. So we can impose constraints for budget, for time. So we're making relationships here at this conference. Find a friend and say, hey, a month from now, I'm going to choose on this path and I'm going to commit to it. Can you keep me accountable? The size of your team, the geographic scope. Like Matthew said, he's selling those mints just in the Midwest area. So that's going to help him focus his goals more. And Stravinsky, the famous composer, says this: the more constraints one imposes, the more one frees oneself. So 2, follow the rules of the road. So I know as a filmmaker, there are definitely certain rules that tell me, so if I'm filming a shot where I want a character to look very powerful, I shoot them from a low angle. because if someone's looking down on you, they appear more powerful. So that constrains me, and that eliminates those infinite possibilities of other choices I could use to shoot that scene. And similarly, I'm sure in each of your crafts there's certain decision frameworks that have been written about and talked about that just require some reading and some education to kind of adopt those for yourselves. And so feel free to play by those rules to start out, and innovation and originality can come later. 3, we can look to follow in others' footsteps. So we can look to others who are influencers that we find inspiration from, who have achieved the things we want to achieve or have the jobs we want, and look at the paths they've taken and try to take similar paths to them. Austin, from this great book I read recently, says, climb your own family tree. So look at the people who influence you, and look at the people who influence those people, and we can think of ourselves as inserting ourselves along this lineage. 4, this has been a common theme today. Don't be afraid to make mistakes or travel down those wrong paths. It's just a necessary part of the process, and as long as we learn from it. And then the last one is worry less and think of others more. So this is mostly advice that I had to learn for myself recently, just starting out working full-time for Bascom Brothers. It was really easy to put my head down and think about the company, think about myself, and think about others less. And I just was really unfulfilled for a long time, couldn't really figure out why it was, and I kind of realized that I wasn't looking up to care for others, both in the business world, but just in my kind of circle of friends and family. So, BascomBrothers.com. Feel free to check out our website, and our Facebook page has even more work on it. We're constantly posting there, so just search us on Facebook. Give us a like, please. And thanks for having us here at this conference.